Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Tari Munjezi. In a series of conversation that we have started with South African representatives abroad who are connecting South Africa with the rest of the world today, is no different. And as we speak to Consul-General, he is Mr. Motumisi Tawana. He joins us from New York, and as we know that we do have a number of Consul-General around the world, and I'm quite happy that he's joining us today, as I know that part of the conversation why we invited him was the recent appointment, the election rather, as chair of African Consuls General Group, which has just happened not long time ago. So thank you so much for joining us, Consul General. In New York, I know that with you now, it's probably just after lunch or going to lunch. Here we are about to wrap up the day. Thank you so much for joining us here to speak to us on the work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to join you, and I look forward to having this conversation with you.
Let's talk about the work of the African Consul Group before we talk about your responsibility as Consul General. That election, what does it mean?
Yeah, well, the African Consuls Group is a group of Consuls General in New York, which is more like a regional group for our continent. Each and every continent has its own group, and then you also here in New York, and then you also then have one that is for all Consuls General in New York. So it's a subgroup of the various regional groups that are then combined at the top, so to speak, by one that works with the rest. So as a subgroup, as you know, it is important to have a strong, cohesive and effective regional group, especially coming from our continent, a continent that, as we all know, tends to be marginalized, that faces challenges in terms of access to trade opportunities, investment, and having a voice in the global economy. So the Consuls Group seeks to ensure that African countries speak with one voice. They become aware of opportunities that are at play in New York. You'd be aware that New York is the financial hub of the world, and then a number of African countries in the main are represented in Washington, D.C., and also here in New York, most of them also to the UN, and then a number also have consulates. So the group then becomes very important in terms of coordinating the interests of African countries on the economic, trade, commerce, and other fronts to ensure that we have access to economic opportunities. We have access to Wall Street, the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, and all important captains of industry, including higher institutions of higher education, opportunities, and so on. So overall, the group seeks to ensure that African countries represented in the U.S. and in particular in New York speak with one voice. We are better coordinated. We are cohesive. We ensure that African interests are advanced in the interest of our people back home on our continent.
Consul General, how big is this group?
Well, the group overall active membership is around 15 countries that participate in our meetings. Of course, as you know, the African continent not having many consulates in New York, you find most of the countries are represented from Washington, or they have a consulate, if not their embassy in Washington, they are represented, like I believe Liberia, they are represented from another state, I think in Miami. So you have a situation whereby some of these countries or from that constitute our group may not also have a presence here. They may be represented from Miami or from Washington, D.C., but overall it's a group that is open to the 54 countries from our continent. In principle, all African countries are part of the group, but active membership is, or active participation rather, is around 15 countries that participate in our meetings because of resource constraints issues. Other countries, as I said, are represented from Washington, D.C., beyond the 15 that we have.
Mm-hmm. And the responsibilities, therefore, maybe you can also talk about what you do at the consulate in terms of the responsibilities thereof.
Well, the responsibilities of being the chair of the group, of course, is to coordinate the activities of the group, convene meetings, ensure that the group and members have access to key role players in New York, whether it's at the stock exchange, the Fortune 500 companies, captains of industry, that they become apprised of developments regarding the needs of the continent, the AU, the free trade area issues, and so on. But over and above that, as I said, it is to ensure that the group and its members are kept apprised of developments. They make the most of the opportunity of being in the financial hub of the world, being New York. Of course, being the Consul-General of South Africa, one's responsibilities are around covering the 15 states that the consulate covers in the northeastern seaboard of the U.S. and all the way down to the North and South Carolina, Kentucky, and Tennessee. So the consulate covers 15 states in this geographic area. The responsibility of the Consul-General being to be the head of the mission, to give strategic direction and to identify opportunities for investment, trade, and opportunities in the area of education, higher education, and in also providing consular civic services to our people, and opportunities to those who want to invest in South Africa, those that are seeking to get passports, those seeking to get visas, and so on.
You really are at the hub of the economic relations for South Africa there in New York. What does this mean for South Africa?
Can you repeat the question? What
Chair, what it means for South Africa? Yes.
Yeah. Well, being the chair demonstrates the recognition that the group, or the high regard that the group has for us as a country. Just by way of background, prior to one's appointment, the group had also has been in the hands of a very capable and effective Consul-General from Nigeria. So he held the fort since February last year. And then COVID hit, and activities of the group were affected in terms of transition from his chairmanship to another. But overall, to hold this important role helps to profile South Africa further and take South Africa, puts South Africa as always on a pedestal. It highlights and demonstrates the high regard that the African countries and Consul-General have in us, given that I've hardly been here for more than I've not even been here for more than a year and a half, and my peers who have been here much longer unanimously nominated me to succeed the Nigerian Consul-General, who's on his way to his next assignment at the end of the month. So I assume the post effectively from the 26th of April when he leaves for his next assignment to go to Cuba, and I'll actually be meeting up with him tomorrow as part of the transition of leadership, and to also be fully apprised of a number of additional tasks or outstanding responsibilities that he has. But it means a lot for South Africa. It means we are recognized by the group, by the continent. We're nominated by countries such as Senegal, Algeria, including Morocco, and Kenya, Nigeria itself. So in a number of Burkina Faso, Angola, Ivory Coast. So it signifies a lot of respect for us, and it signifies that South Africa has an opportunity to also ensure that the African agenda is further advanced. We ensure that as South Africa grows, it grows together with the continent. It signifies the importance of South Africa being that important gateway to the continent. And if we lead the group, or as we're going to lead the group and lead it the right way, our rise will be together with the continent itself.
We are talking at a critical time, Consul-General, in terms of South Africa as head of the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area. How significant is that also, that conversation to also say we have quite an important platform that we should advance in in the continent, but also linking it with the rest of Europe, because there you have an opportunity to interact with a number of people from different parts of the world, not just USA.
Yeah, it's a very critical question that you are raising. In fact, part of one's vision is to ensure that the African Free Trade arrangement, the African Free Trade Area issue and project is something that my aim is to ensure that there's greater understanding on the part of not only the group, members of the group itself, but here in the US, to ensure that there are synergies in terms of our operation as the group with the African Free Trade Area goals and the goals, ideas, and ideals. In fact, one of the things that I've already started doing is to connect with relevant people within relevant structures on the continent, experts, people within even UNECA and so on, to see how best the African Free Trade Area can be, the Continental Free Trade Area can be discussed or explored, opportunities, avenues explored, and so on, to ensure that we make the most of it and ensure that the group also helps to put it on the spotlight, and opportunities we make the most of the opportunities therein. So part of one's vision is indeed to ensure that there are synergies between what the group does and the continental interests.
Consul-General, there always has to be a political will in most of the work that you do. And one critical question is, how are you connected with the South African Embassy, which is serving its mission in the United Nations, for example, but South African mission to the UN, but also our embassy in Washington as well? Is there synergy going on there and with your work, because the political and economic needs to actually work in tandem?
Yeah, I'm pleased you've asked that question, and I believe in terms of how I work and operate, I actually give practical expression to what you're talking about, whereby we don't work in silos. I believe that the consulate needs to work side by side with a permanent mission here in New York. We are actually on the same floor in the current building that we are occupying, and then the embassy in Washington D.C. We work also very closely with the ambassador and the embassy. And as I indicated at the outset, that the consulate actually, you could liken it to a subdivision of an embassy, because we cover 15 states here in the U.S., whereas the embassy is responsible, or the ambassador covers the whole United States. So we cover a region of the U.S. through the embassy and the ambassador in Washington D.C. So there's no way a consulate can be effective and coherent if it does not work with the embassy, and if it does not work also closely with the permanent mission. And we happen to share the same space with the permanent mission, and working close together has also yielded lots of results in terms of, you may have also learned that there are greater arrangements to ensure that we eventually find ourselves as a permanent mission and a consulate in a good and A-class building that will be representational and be outside of the hospital that we've been occupying for the past many years. So we've been working very closely together with the permanent mission and as a team to ensure that we get relocated very soon.
That's quite critical. Consul-General, there's been things that you have reflected on before, your journey thus far, because you have just resumed this responsibility not a long time ago. You have not even reached like 2 years. Talk to us about your journey thus far and some of the highlights, because I'm sure you were ready when you got an appointment letter to serve in this role.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. Well, I'm humbled noting where I come from when you talk about the journey, considering that I joined the department in the middle of 1998, and I joined as an assistant foreign service officer. So I started at the very bottom in 1998. I was with the multilateral section dealing with UN peacekeeping and security issues. And then in 2001, after completing diplomatic training, I was assigned to go to Washington, D.C. So I've actually served in Washington, D.C., served 5 years over there, and then also got my promotion while I was in Washington, D.C. In 2006, I was back at head office with the Policy Research Unit, PRAU, and then also moved to the DTRD, the research, the diplomatic trade and research, the diplomatic training and research, diplomatic training unit. And then I also got a promotion to a deputy director position there, and thereafter I was assigned to the mission, to the permanent mission. Actually, I've worked with the permanent mission before, and I was in 2007 with the permanent mission till 2011 as a counselor to the 5th committee of the UN, the budgetary and administrative committee, the committee dealing with the budget of the UN, and also served as the vice chairman of the committee, of the 5th committee. And thereafter, 2011, I came back to headquarters. I was in the minister's office till 2011. Till 2015, from 2011 to 2015. And then during that period also got elected to serve the UN as an advisor to its Committee on Contributions for 2 consecutive terms of 3 years each. So for 6 years, I was with that Committee on Contributions, advising the committee, the UN, on the contributions of member states. And between 2015, the middle of 2015 to 2019, I was with the Human Rights Section, UN Human Rights. And and then 2019, I got appointed then to come here as the end of 2019 to come here as the Consul-General. So since 2020, I've been the Consul-General here in New York City.
It's been quite a journey. One will say of a multilateralist in a way, because you have always been connected with multilateral as well. I mean, it will give me an opportunity now to ask you, what do you make of South Africa? I know it's a question I've also put to the ambassador who's serving in the United Nations, Ambassador Motumisi. We had a conversation with her as well, talking about South Africa at the UN as well. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you got this question, and you had time to reflect on your journey and what role has South Africa played before, and how South Africa is received and the role that South Africa has played. It's really an open question for me to give you your own assessment thus far of South Africa, and one at the UN, for example, which I know you're very connected with. I mean, we're also serving right now in the Peace Building Commission, for example, quite a critical role for the UN as well in its peace agenda. Generally, how do you see South Africa at the UN?
Well, as I said, I served at the UN between 2011. I was with our permanent mission between 2007 to 2011, and even before, having joined the department in 1998 and having dealt with UN issues, peace and security back then, up till dealing with contributions issues, the budgetary and administrative issues of the UN. I would say I'm in a comfortable position to gauge our activities and effectiveness in a manner that is objective, that is experienced and almost like research driven, or rather from a practical perspective, so to speak. So South Africa, I think, has its role as acquitted itself well within the UN system, being a middle power. It has done well within the UN system, having also served twice on the Security Council of the UN, and as you have indicated, South Africa being with the Peace Building Commission, South Africa also having, during its 2 tenures, presided over the Security Council and ensured that issues of peace and security, that the African continent's situation is taken seriously, that the African continent in no time should receive a permanent seat on the council. So I would on the UN Security Council. So I would say South Africa has done exceptionally well for a middle power that it is, and its role and influence is well respected. And we've had various ambassadors that, to this day, when I bump into other ambassadors or diplomats, they continue speaking very highly of South African diplomats, South African ambassadors. South Africa's reputation overall within the UN system is good, and we are seen as a champion for the reform of the UN itself, a champion for the expansion and the democratization of the Security Council.
Mm-hmm. That's quite important. And then what has COVID done to your work? Because everyone is assessing about how COVID has impacted their work. How has COVID-19 impacted your work? Are normal economic activities happening? because we want to see investment coming to this country so that we can be able to see all these challenges that we have as a country addressed.
Yeah, I mean, as we all know, when COVID hit and the world, flights had to be stopped and international activities almost frozen. Of course, COVID became the new normal. So normally we would have already received the president coming to the U.S. Minister of Finance, Trade, and so on. So COVID has had a very negative impact, not only on us as South Africa, but the continent and the world at large. But in spite of the challenges that COVID has presented, we continue to do our all to ensure that in spite of COVID and the new normal, we keep flying the flag of South Africa high, ensuring that South Africa remains a priority or is recognized and is identified as an important investment and tourism, trade, and otherwise option and a destination of choice for tourists and so on. So overall, COVID has had serious challenges not only on us as South Africa and our representation, but globally it has had that impact. But in spite of all that, through virtual meetings and reaching out to relevant parties, stakeholders, we continue to ensure that our flag flies sky high. We continue through virtual meetings to meet with captains of industry. We continue to meet with various companies that are with the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, and so on. And you may recall our April 27, we marked it through an activation on the digital screen of NASDAQ at Times Square. South Africa's Freedom Day was celebrated on NASDAQ's digital screen. It was owing to the work that we did to ensure that our Freedom Day was also marked in spite of COVID. And overall, we have not ceased in terms of reaching out to relevant stakeholders, the Fortune 500 companies. We keep meeting with various heads of those companies and relevant people, even in the pharmaceutical industry. Your Pfizer, your Johnson & Johnson, your Henry Schein, who are in the mental and dental areas and so on, and meeting with all critical role players, universities, seeking opportunities for South African students, academics, and so on, to ensure that there are academic exchanges, among other things. So despite COVID, we've been soldiering on and ensuring that South Africa's profile remains high.
It's quite important. Consul-General, let's conclude by this important question. Normally when people approaches you about South Africa, what's the question that they often ask and how do you respond to them as we conclude? Consul-General?
Well, normally, I come across people who have high regard for South Africa, who would like to visit South Africa, who rate our country highly, who see it as an important destination for tourism, for business, for investment, and they normally want to would like to know what is it that they need to do, or which places to visit, for example, which industries hold the greatest potential if it's potential investors. If it's ordinary people, they would like to know in terms of tourism where they could go to in terms of visiting South Africa. And if it's people who are interested in business, they would like to know who are the role players that they should talk to, and they rate also South African wine very highly. Most of them, they speak of South African wine as among the best, and one of the things that we always ensure as the consulate in terms of our bragging rights, we tend to quiz them as to how long do they think South Africa has been in the wine industry, and they become shocked to learn that South Africa has been in winemaking for 362 years. In the 1659s, South Africa got into the industry of producing wine. So overall, there's a good story to tell when people ask about South Africa and opportunities that abound in our country.
Our South African Consul-General in New York, thank you so much for joining us. It's Mr. Motumisi Tawana. Really a pleasure for you to speak to us this day. Thank you so much for making time to speak to us.